Muses of Mythology is a spoiler-heavy podcast.
That's an understatement.
We're going to discuss not just the events of this book, but the Rhineverse as a whole, and really anything that we feel is relevant. You can find full spoiler warnings in the show notes. Yeah?
An extra big shout out to our God tier level patrons,
No.
Tim O'Connor.
No.
You didn't do that.
Because we don't do it on the main feed episodes because your recorded outro has it.
Right.
All right.
I forgot. Dude, we've been recording bonus episodes almost exclusively for so long.
Welcome to Muses of Mythology, a podcast where we explore how ancient myths become part of modern pop culture through the lens of Rick Riordan's Percy Jackson and the Olympian series. This is Story 66, Hestia. I'm your co-host and podcasting muse, Darien Smartt. Joining me is my co-host and brother, DJ.
How's everybody doing today? I'm the muse of comfort because I enjoy being comfy and cozy.
Mm-hmm. You are a cozy boy.
I am very much so. I try my best to be.
What's your biggest tip for being cozy?
Get yourself a comfy hoodie. You think I'm saying comfy as an adjective. It is the name of the hoodie.
Yes, that is the comfy brand.
Yes.
Yep. Agreed.
It's
look it up.
Very wonderful.
All right. We'll give you a chance, listener, to look it up while we go muse around in the garden for a bit.
Yep.
DJ, I'm really excited for this topic today.
I know you are.
Yes, Hestia is one of my favorite goddesses.
She's a lot of fun.
She could be a lot of fun. I'll say that. I will say she could be a lot of fun.
In the Riordan series.
Yeah. DJ, why don't you expand on that? What do you remember about Hestia in the Percy Jackson books?
Well, she tends to the hearth.
Mm-hmm.
And the flame at Camp Half-Blood. And she's the last Olympian.
Yes. She is the titular last Olympian in the Last Olympian book. Which is interesting because based on what Rick Riordan set up, she's not an Olympian.
No, she gave up her seat.
Yeah.
For Apollo?
Dionysus.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
But she was an Olympian, so I guess she has that honorary title?
I guess so. She was, yeah, well, we'll put a pin in that before I go on. So we meet Hestia right after the encounter with Luke's mom.
Mm-hmm.
After they leave, they just encounter a girl in the woods by a fireplace.
Yeah.
She's described as... The girl had mousy brown hair and a simple brown dress. She wore a scarf over her head, so she looked like a pioneer kid, like the ghost of a little house on the prairie or something. She poked the fire with a stick, and it seemed to glow more richly red than a normal fire. My first thought was monster. Percy thinks she's a monster, but Nico recognizes her and bows and greets her as lady. And he eventually recognizes her as well. Is like, oh, hey, I know you. The first time I came to camp, you were sitting by the fire in the middle of the commons area. You did not stop to talk, the girl recalled sadly. Alas, most never do. Nico talked to me. It was the first in many years. Everyone rushes about. No time for visiting family.
Yeah.
Which is just kind of a really, like, mom, grandma guilt trip thing.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. But, she is there. Like, I think we talked about this at another point in time, but there is a brown-haired girl tending to the fire at Camp Half-Blood, that first book.
He set it up.
He set it up. And I don't think that was a throwaway. I think in his mind he knew it was Hestia.
Oh, yeah.
Percy just didn't go talk to her because it would have been weird for the flow of pacing.
Percy had a lot going on that first day.
Percy had a lot going on. But it makes sense for Nico to talk to her because Nico's he's at the camp by himself and that first, the third book, and he's going to talk to, and it's wintertime, so there's not a lot of people to talk to.
Yeah.
So he saw the girl tending the fire and was immediately like, hey, what's your deal?
Fire.
Who's
Awesome.
your godly parent?
Yeah.
She's like, actually.
Not a god, not a demigod. Full blown.
Yeah. Well, actually, straight up God. Nico asks her why she's not fighting Typhon with the other Olympians, and she just says, I'm not much for fighting. Besides, someone has to keep the home fires burning while the other guards are away. So you're guarding Mount Olympus, I asked. Guard may be too strong a word, but if you ever need a warm place to sit and a home-cooked meal, you are welcome to visit. Now eat. How do we feel about that?
She's the god of home and hearth.
Yeah.
Wants you to feel comfy.
I like her feeling comfy.
Yeah.
It's more like the her not fighting and also just being like, yeah, I'm not really guarding. I'm just kind of hanging out.
It's Rick's character. A lot of the characters are like, oh, just kind of hanging out, I guess.
It's vibes.
Yeah.
All vibes, no action. We don't see Hestia again until the siege on Manhattan, when Prometheus has given Percy given Percy the Pandora's box, the Pythos jar with hope in it. And I do love that, the use of Hestia at the end when Percy gives the jar to her. Yeah, because Rachel almost opens it. She's having everyone's having a weird episode. And, Hestia focused on Rachel. Hello, my dear. You've come to our hearth at last. You've been expecting me. And doesn't really answer that. Because Percy looks in, he sees I like the thing about her fire when they look into the fire and they see all of these cozy images.
Mm-hmm.
My mother, Paul, and I eating Thanksgiving dinner at the kitchen table. My friends and I are on the campfire at Camp Half-Blood, singing songs and roasting marshmallows. Rachel and me driving along the beach in Paul's Prius. And she gives her some advice about, to claim your place at the hearth, you have to let go of the distractions. And it's basically that's when Rachel's like, Percy, you've kind of just been my manic pixie dream boy, but you're a big distraction. I have to let you go. Yeah. What's happening here? Don't worry about it. We will deal with this in
Rachel was his manic pixie dream girl too, so.
You're right. True. But in this same scene is when I picked up Pandora's jar. The spirit of hope fluttered inside, trying to warm the cold container. Hestia, I said, I give this to you as the offering. The goddess tilted her head. I am the least of the gods. Why would you trust me with this? You're the last Olympian, I said, and the most important. And why is that, Percy Jackson? Because hope survives best at the hearth, I said. Guard it for me, and I won't be tempted to give up again. The goddess smiled. She shook the jar in her hands, and it began to glow. The hearth fire burned a little brighter. Well done, Percy Jackson, and may the gods bless you.
I like it.
Hope survives best
at home.
Well, that's what hearth represents.
I get that.
We'll get to that in a minute. But just skipping ahead, hearth is literally the embodiment concept of home.
Okay.
And that comfort and security of home. That is what hearth, because every home in Greece had a hearth.
Mm-hmm.
And public places had hearths too. We'll get into all that later. But, listener, you probably gathered, don't super love the way Hestia is necessarily portrayed with the not fighting and not even kind of posing herself as an attempt to guard, because she's tending the fires because, I don't know, it could have been used as a thing of she's just like, well, someone has to be home. Someone has to care for the homely goods. And I feel like that's not necessarily it. It's like Hestia's there preserving the home, so there's something worth fighting for.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Percy is saying when he's giving her the hope. It's hope survives best at the hearth. If I know there's still a hearth, I know there's still home, I'm not going to give up on it.
Yeah.
So I feel like there was an opportunity for Hestia to embody that home, that necessity, the security, the thing they are fighting for.
Mm-hmm.
And her just being like, I'm not one for fighting and I'm not guarding, I think undercuts that and makes her just seem
just
passive.
A little bit. Yeah.
When home is not passive, home is fierce. You don't fight for, people will fight for bad reasons, but heroes, in the way we tell stories in modern pop culture, don't fight for power or glory. They fight to protect what they care about, their home, their family, their loved ones. And that's everything Hestia kind of could represent and just kind of doesn't.
Yeah.
So that's what bums me out in the Hestia portrayal in this book. But I liked Hope Survives Best at the Hearth. And I like in the scene with Kronos, where they fight Kronos in the throne room. At one point in time, his scythe is thrown into the fire.
Mm-hmm. And he goes to pick it up, but it's scalding hot. It's
scalding hot because there's even a note. Hold on, I'm trying to find it. As Annabeth. My vision came back to the focus. I saw Kronos grasping his sword. Then he bellowed in pain and dropped it. His hands were smoking and seared. The hearth fire had grown red hot, like the scythe wasn't compatible with it. I saw an image of Hestia flickering the ashes, frowning at Kronos with disapproval.
Bitch.
Bitch. I also like that, where she's not she doesn't step in and fight with them, but when given the scythe falls into the hearth, and it's literally her domain.
Yeah.
So I also like that. Now, we will really quickly acknowledge that after this book, we've never seen Hestia again.
I'm sure there are plenty of gods we've never seen again.
But we saw a lot of the Roman forms in the Roman one.
Yeah, but did we see Giannis again?
Huh?
Did we see Giannis again?
Yo, no one's talking about Giannis, okay?
I'm just saying.
We're not talking about
He's mainly a Roman god.
You're right. We did talk about Giannis, and he should have been in the Roman books. You are correct, DJ. Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. But Hestia!
I know.
So, weird that we didn't even see her she's a big deal in Rome. Like, Hestia's counterpart, Vesta, when Christianity became, like, the dominant religion, like, and all of, like, the pagan cults were, like, being banned and falling out of favor, like the cults to Vesta were like one of the last ones. They had to be specifically outlawed.
Mm-hmm.
So, kind of a bummer that we didn't have Vesta in that one. But, c'est la vie. So, that is Hestia I think maybe we got a cameo of her in other books with someone describing her by the fire. I haven't read the Lost Hero, so I don't know if like Piper or someone clocks a brunette girl. She's definitely not in Trials of Apollo, because Apollo would have acknowledged that he saw Hestia, because he would have known it was Hestia.
Yeah.
So also a bummer there that Hestia... Wow, that would have been a really cool moment if he like talks to her in the first book and he's all just gotta get home, I gotta get home. And Hestia's kind of just like, yeah, but was Olympus ever really your home? Like, what does that mean to you? Or maybe it wasn't, and then she sees him later and it's like, it feels like your home's not where you thought it was now.
I guess to be fair, in those two books, Zeus was being a dick about contact with the Earth world. In the two series, sorry.
Right. Dionysus was in the last book, though.
Dionysus is also the camp counselor, and that's his punishment.
Right, so he has, because he wasn't in the first one, but he was in the last one. You know what? You're right, DJ. It's all Zeus's fault.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There you go.
Yeah, you're right. Because the gods are having they can't handle so Hestia wouldn't have been there because the other thing. So you're right. It's all Zeus's fault.
All Zeus's fault that we didn't get to see Hestia again.
Didn't get to see Hestia again. Thank you, DJ. As long as we can blame Zeus, I'm always very happy. I will accept it. What do you want to guess? Like I said, she's a goddess of home and hearth. Any guesses regarding her role mythologically? What do you know about Hestia?
I know she's the goddess of home and hearth.
Yes.
I know nothing about any stories that she's been in.
Well, that's fair because she hasn't been in many.
Okay.
Like none?
I know she wielded a gun.
You know what? Put a pin in it. We'll talk about that.
Fucking gun.
Just straight up, it's a gun. Oh my God. So good. I love it. So good. She's the goddess of hearth, but that's both domestic and civic.
Uh-huh.
And home. And what that means is, like I said, like every home had a hearth, but the hearth was also in public spaces, in like public places and stuff. And because it represented the idea of the
city being the home.
Yeah, exactly. The city being the home, kind of like the cultural concept of structure and order, that notion of stability. Like that is what, and Hestia's name literally means like hearth or fireside. Yeah. Like she wasn't just goddess of this thing. She was the literal embodiment of this concept.
Yeah.
Like her the fire she isn't like that of like the raw creation, like the blacksmith forge that is Hephaestus. Like because that's more potential and chaotic. Like I said, like Hestia is known almost like she is fire that was created for a purpose that is not the fire that like ravages and burns. It is that warmth, that creation of food, that nourishment, that comfort. Like that is what Hestia is and what she represented in this like Greek culture. She didn't have very many public temples because every hearth was a temple to Hestia. Like in the home, there were rites for Hestia, usually done by the leading woman of the household. So like the mother usually, sometimes a man would perform it.
The matriarch.
The matriarch, which the word matriarch would almost imply that this person had any sort of like power within the home. and that was not the case in ancient Greece. But yes, the person who we would identify as the matriarch of the family was typically the one who would have done these rites. Mm-hmm. In public spaces, obviously, women did not have any sort of presence in public spaces, but the rites to Hestia were still very important, so much so that it was the most powerful civic officer that was the one that would conduct the said rites at the hearths. So if there were any sort of a failure to tend to the hearth was viewed as not just taboo, but almost like disaster. Right? It symbolizes a failure to one's family and public, a failure to culture, a failure to religion, an absolute breakdown of the basic comfort and security of society. I feel like I'm going to say the words comfort and security.
Well, I mean, that's kind of exactly what Hestia is.
Thank you, DJ. Thank you. Now, there were, not to say that these fires were never allowed to go out. They could be extinguished on purpose for very specific reasons. Mm-hmm. But if that was the case, it had to be done correctly. And then there had to be purification rites and rituals to relight the hearth. It was considered, it was very serious and was done with the utmost respects. I'm kind of going all out of order.
What's the story she was in?
Let me get to that. I'm going out of order in my notes, but it occurred to me that this order will make more sense.
Okay.
Leading up. So Hestia didn't have there aren't records of a lot of priests to Hestia. Mm-hmm. There are some notice there was a record for in the Roman area, Spartan records noted that several women had the priestly title of Hestia, and similar records from the city of Colossus noted that the daughter of a local high-ranking politician also had a similar title. Mm-hmm. So it is indicated that while not super common for this position to be done by a woman, it wasn't zero.
Yeah.
But again, there weren't a lot of freestanding temples. There were a couple, but because every hearth was her temple, every person who tended the hearth essentially held the cultural responsibility of appeasing Hestia.
Yeah.
Because additionally, it was in every offering, it was believed that the first portion of every sacrificial offering to the gods actually went to Hestia. Uh-huh. Because her responsibility was tending to the fires of Olympus with the fatty portion of animal sacrifices. So she has to get the first portion to continue to make the fires burn, mm-hmm. which led to a phrase of the time, which is first to Hestia, which was what that would mean. Which makes it a little weird that Rick has Hestia say she is least important of the gods, because in a Homeric hymn to Aphrodite, she is described as, among all mortals, she was the chief goddess. And that is because she got the first portions of the sacrifice. And also during festivals, the first offering of wine and the last wine were given to Hestia. So that's not necessarily true to say that she's least important of the gods, because of her embodiment of this cultural concepts of just the idea of you have to appease Hestia to maintain literal order in the home. She was deeply important, which is probably why she's in no myths. Mm-hmm. So you have the story of she was one of the first 6 Olympians, daughter of Rhea and Kronos. She's actually the eldest daughter.
Oh, nice.
She's I think eldest daughter. I think she might be the oldest firstborn. Or that could be Hades. I'm never really sure. But she was the firstborn, so the first swallowed, and then the last one to be regurgitated, making her both the oldest and the youngest, essentially. So that's an interesting place that Hestia plays. And then so she was with the other Titans, or the other gods, fighting the Titans. And then it was only after the Titan War, when the gods took power, that Zeus assigned Hestia to tend to the hearths. After some time, all of a sudden, she's got both Poseidon and Apollo being like, hey, I love you and want to marry you. And she's hey.
Sorry, did Kronos swallow his daughters?
Yeah.
I thought that was just about his sons.
So that's another thing. It goes either way, where sometimes it'll just be the sons, but more often than not, he swallowed all of the children.
Okay.
So Hestia included.
Okay.
So yeah, it's usually all of them.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't have. Again, depends
Sorry,
on.
continue.
No, it's a totally valid question because it does depend on the.
It just seems like
source.
most modern retellings, it's only the sons.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Well, I mean,
isn't that interesting?
It's also because most of the time when a prophecy comes out, it's about a son, right? So it's like, oh, your next, like one of your sons will overthrow you. So he swallows all of his sons and doesn't have to worry about the daughters.
Yeah, but the thing about
for
Cronus
Zeus, it was your next son's going to overthrow you. He gets Athena.
Yeah, if your next child is a boy, he will overthrow. But the thing about it is, it was not prophecy that did this. It was paranoia. So because Kronos helped Gaia overthrow Uranus. And so Kronos feared that one of his own offspring would overthrow him. And so he swallowed all of Rhea's children.
Okay.
And then later on, Zeus was paranoid that when Metis was pregnant, that he would have an offspring that would overthrow him. But as Athena, so everything was fine.
I thought that one was, in fact,
maybe it was
prophecy.
Maybe Zeus
that
was
one
prophecy.
was prophecy.
That was a prophecy. But
because
Kronos
it was like
definitely paranoid.
If Metis gives birth to a son, he will overthrow you. If it's a daughter, she will be loyal to you.
Yeah, I can't remember. We'll have to listener tell us what we said in our Athena episode. Yeah. It's been a hot second, but maybe it was just if there was a son, he will overthrow you, or if, I can't remember. But I know for Kronos, it wasn't a prophecy. It was just he was paranoid. So it depends, but uafly he swallowed all of Rhea's children. He just wasn't willing to risk
anything. Okay, cool.
So after that, Hestia tends the hearth, and it's interesting because at that point, again, she does. Oh, hold on, I was talking about Poseidon and Apollo getting all up in her business, and they're like, "Hey, I want to marry you," and she's like, "Hey, I want you out of my face."
Yeah, please no.
And they won't leave her alone. So she just straight up goes to Zeus and is like, "Hey, I hear that Athena gets to be a maiden goddess. I want that deal. Athena and Artemis are running around as me. I want that deal. I never want to get married, and I want to be left the hell alone." And Zeus says, "Okay,
that's fine.
Yeah, sure. Okay, you take a vow. Right. You'll be a maiden goddess. You will be." And that's what she does. And it's it's the same Homeric hymn to Aphrodite where we get this tale. Wild that there's so much information of Hestia in these hymns. I need to know more about it. But in the same hymn, it's described that like Aphrodite has no power over Hestia. So that's some big Ace Arrow vibes from me, kid.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's even in Lore Olympus at least. And it makes sense. If you lose your virginity, then you can be run by sex.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. Like, it's the reason that these goddesses are maidens isn't because, like, necessarily, like, sex or, like, their relationship to men or their desire for men. It is to make sure they are never ruled by men. Yeah. Because if you would have to get married otherwise and then be under someone else's control. It's the line of Aphrodite having no power over Hestia that I found very interesting because that's not a line that's said for, like,
I
often.
guess that's fair, yeah.
So that's why I'm like, headcanon, Ace Arrow, Hestia? Absolutely. You know what? It's in the source material. Let's go.
There you go.
But yeah, with that said, Hestia isn't, like, when you have the giant, the Tainakami, the giant Namaki, whatever, it's the giant war. Yeah. If, like, there's not, like, stories of Hestia being in that, except maybe there are actually.
They're just gone?
Well, there's a fresco or a frieze. I think it's a frizzy. There's some art piece that's badly damaged with years and years. So you can't really tell who these, like, you can tell they're probably supposed to be goddesses, but you can't necessarily tell exactly who they're supposed to be. But there's visual indications that this might be Hestia fighting along.
We do know that the giants, every giant was made to be a counterpart for another god.
I don't know if that's a real thing or if that's a Riordan thing.
I'll buy it. I will buy that it's a real thing.
I haven't done any research on the giants. I
buy that it's a real thing because it does sound like something that Greeks would do. Because, I mean, even the Titans had their godly counterparts.
Yeah, but that was less of like because the Titans or the giants in the Riordan books are like the
exact opposite.
Superman.
Yeah,
like, they're the
wow.
opposite. They're like Bizarro.
Yeah.
Whereas the Titans were just also gods of these things, or Titans were also deities of these concepts.
And so I just imagine that it's probably a similar situation, right? They might not be Bizarro versions of themselves, but they might also just be counterparts to the gods.
True. We'll get into that in a couple of years.
Yeah, eventually.
Eventually. But for now, so this fresco, there's like indications that it could have been Hestia. Because Hestia isn't depicted a lot in art, but when she is often shown like very modestly, like long robes and stuff, covered. Usually has a veil and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes she's got, what was the thing she had in her hand? It was kind of cool. So she sits on a plain wooden throne with a white woolen cushion. She's sometimes shown with a staff in hand or by a large fire. So with this, it's this frieze in the Siphian treasury in Delphi.
Mm-hmm.
And so the letter tracings of one of the two goddesses to the right of Hephaestus has been restored to Hestia. But they could also be Demeter, Persephone, or two of the three fates. Because there's two goddesses standing next to Hephaestus.
Okay.
So it's unclear, but there is indication.
Very well could be, because it is Hephaestus, right?
Right, and it'd be cool if, like, actually, usually Hestia was kind of more paired with Hermes because of his, like, a lot of his things was day-to-day culture and life. So Hestia and Hermes also often were, like, kind of paired together in, like, prayer and symbolism. Another thing we talked about earlier about Hestia being one of the 12 Olympians.
Okay.
She often is. And then sometimes it's Dionysus. You literally we can go to Athens, and there is, so for listeners who don't remember, mythic interpretations will say that, like, when Dionysus came along and, like, was a demigod who became a god, there's, like, he wanted to join Olympus, and there was, like, contention that there couldn't be more than 12 Olympians, and then Hestia gave up her place for Dionysus, and at that point withdrew from all the meddling of the other Olympians, and Dionysus now sits on the side of the goddesses. So, like, in Athens, there is an altar to the gods at the Agora, and Hestia is included in that.
Okay.
But the East frieze of the Parthenon has Dionysus instead of Hestia.
Okay, so it just kind of depends on what sect of...
Literally it's user's choice, whatever version you want. Like, it's not really a hard and fast rule of who is in the 12, is it Hestia or Dionysus? But a possible interpretation could be that, like, the hearth is immovable. It is part of the household. Like, if you were to move homes, you could not take the hearth with you. It's built into it. So this kind of, like, cultural interpretation could be that, like, Hestia is part of the Olympians, but she does not go anywhere because the hearth of Olympus does not move around. And so Hestia, said earlier, does not have a bunch of myths about her, like a Zeus or even Artemis or Athena. But that does not suggest that she's not important. I would argue it's because of how important she was to these, like, intrinsic, abstract cultural foundation of Greece that she's not running around. It's almost like the same as Hades. Hades doesn't have myths of him coming up and doing things. He is running the underworld. Also, they were afraid of Hades and death and didn't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
But it would have been, I would say, almost disrespectful to claim that Hestia was not tending the hearth, or maybe bad luck. I would almost say that, like, Hestia,
if she was doing some,
if she was doing something besides tending the hearth, like that, then who's watching the hearth? Who's protecting the home and security of our city?
Yeah,
like, that would be terrifying. There's one. There is literally just one. It's from Ovid, because of course it's from Ovid, the hack. So this is actually, Ovid was a Roman poet. So the story is actually about Vesta. And it's a poem that Ovid wrote saying that, like, all the gods attended the feast, and Hestia had nodded off and was almost assaulted by Priapus, who was the god of animal and vegetable fertility.
What the fuck?
Yeah, dude. Creepy thing to be in charge of, because this dude was a creep.
Yeah, goof ass.
So he finds Hestia asleep and is like, okay, the worst. And then a donkey actually makes a braying noise, waking up Hestia. Not just a random choice. The donkey was a secret animal to Vesta.
Yeah.
So she wakes up, and then realizes what happened. The other gods realize what happened, and they kick Priapus's ass
Good.
and send him away. Which is like, yeah, cool.
Great.
You know who your leader is, right, though? But we digress. So, important to note, this tale is almost identical to the myth of Priapus and Lotus, which is told in the same book. So the difference is, to get away from Priapus, Lotus turns into the lotus plants, further cementing the fact that Ovid was a hack.
Some people just write the same thing.
So that's the only Hestia myth that we have. And it's not even about Hestia. It is full on about Vesta.
Yeah.
And that's really it. But
She wields a gun.
so yeah, let's talk. Oh, let me skim through, make sure there's nothing I forgot. Hestia's associated sacrificial animal was the domestic pig.
Okay.
And I just think that's real cute. And if our patrons vote for us to create Pokemon teams for the Olympians, I will definitely be claiming Hestia, and she is absolutely getting
Okay.
the evolved form of Lechonk. Because of course the girl one, because I just evolved Lechonk, and I didn't know that their evolved forms look
Oh,
different.
yeah.
She's so cute, just like Pig. Oh my god! So Hestia has that. Anyway, that's Hestia in Myths. DJ, you've mentioned her having a gun a lot. Would
Okay,
you like to
so
expound?
In the video
Cocktail note,
game,
expound.
in the video game Hades,
In which Hestia does not appear,
nope. But neither does Hera.
or Hephaestus or Apollo.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
fine. Or as we mentioned, Thetis. It's fine.
plenty of
It's fine.
people
I just
that-
wanted to specify she doesn't
Yeah.
appear, but she's mentioned like other characters are.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
fine.
And so in the game, there
I
are-
have no beef with the Hades game like I do with Mr. Riordan regarding Hestia. She better be
There-
in Hades too, though.
There are 6 weapons, and there are weapons that the 6 gods used in the Titan War,
Mm-hmm.
right? The original 6. You got Poseidon's sword, Hades' spear, Zeus's shield, Hera's bow, Demeter's gloves, and Hestia's gun.
She just has, what is it called?
It's the adamant rail.
The adamant rail,
and it's
which
just
is
a fucking gun.
gun.
Like it's the most. It's
My favorite
everybody.
weapon in the game.
I like the aspect of.
Oh, you want to unlock the aspect of Lucifer.
Yeah, spoilers,
And then
obviously,
we go
for aspect.
Yes, listen.
But aspect of Lucifer turns that thing into something that I never wanted to use, into the only thing aside from the gloves,
Mhm.
which I like punchies. The aspect of Lucifer turns into the craziest fucking weapon out
It's
there.
incredible. It's like now it's a laser gun.
It's a laser gun with multiplying damage as long as you keep on the same target. It's the
over.
most It's the craziest thing.
I escaped 8 times with it,
Yeah.
and now I cannot get out
Speaking
again.
of, did you hear that somebody did it on Max Heat?
Holy shit!
Yeah, even the developers we thought it was impossible.
Of course, yeah, but like, gamers will find a way. Much like life, gamers find a way.
Yeah, so somebody did that shit on Max Heat, and that's insane.
Yeah, I also like in Hades, you mentioned earlier, I think we talked about, so in Hades, the goddesses are not siblings to the gods. They were born of a different Titan.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only comment I have. I just think it's great. I really hope we get Hestia, Hephaestus, Apollo, and Hera in
I like
Hades
Apollo's
too.
design.
Yeah, we definitely are getting Apollo.
We
seen
saw
him
him.
in the
We've
trailer.
seen Nemesis.
Yeah.
And we don't think we've seen anybody else, but it's
well, we've seen a couple.
set
We've
to come
seen-
out sometime this year.
We've seen
Or
more.
at least the early access, which I'm gonna get.
Yes. More something like some sort of god of doom. We've seen him as well, and then obviously Hecate.
To bring me to the Steam page. No, to be announced. Never mind.
Eventually,
Eventually,
very
hopefully
excited
next
for
year.
that though. Man, here's the thing. It's I don't even actually need her to be in the game. I just need them to show me what she would look like. What I actually
Just
do
want
want
the art
is them
style.
I do just want them to release art of
All the gods.
all of the gods, all of the Olympians, and then just a bunch of other gods. And just because I just also I almost said Melanoe, but she's literally the protagonist.
She's actually the protagonist.
My bad. I had a moment.
Zagreus' sister, the
Mhm.
protagonist.
The protagonist. I'm so excited. So that's really, she has a gun because she's the goddess of fire, right? What is the reason I don't have it.
I have no idea.
Hades.
Because it's the most dangerous weapon and everybody comments on it.
Yeah, everyone's like, what is that?
That is a fucking goof-ass weapon. Holy shit.
I love the thing. It's man, if this ever got out to the mortals, things would be bad.
Yeah.
It's called the adamant rail, but its name is exogryph.
Oh,
It
yeah.
looks like a bird of prey, a griffin, probably.
Well, that's the aspect of Zagreus.
Okay, but that's baseline.
Well, Zagreus has his own aspect for all these guns, and that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's not baseline.
But we don't see what it would look like if Hestia wielded it.
We do. We have the aspect of Hestia.
Hold on. No, we don't.
Yeah, every single one of them has an aspect of their original.
No, it's... Oh, there she is. My bad. Well, because I just sped run from Zagreus straight to to get the aspect of Lucifer. I never used it with the aspect of Hestia on.
Well, yeah, but they all have an aspect of their original, or at least of their godly users.
Yeah, sorry, that's me. I forgot. You're right. You're right.
Yeah, there's an aspect of Poseidon, of Hades, of...
Okay, yes!
Just saying, Darien.
I'm looking for the entry. Hold on. Least known among the gods who stood together to depose the Titans is Lady Hestia, reclusive goddess of the hearth and one-time wielder of Exegryph, the rail of adamant, an artifact of metal and flame so dreadful that the gods themselves abandoned it once their fell work was done. The rail has a form and function befit its one's nightmares. While other weapons of the gods inspired mortal counterparts, I am relieved to say the rail's cruel design has not yet been discovered in a stroke of mortal inspiration to discuss their wars.
It's not really found out what gunpowder.
Yeah, not yet.
Gunpowder.
Not over here yet.
No, not here. Give it a couple hundred years.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually they get gunpowder and they start using it in, like, cannons and shit.
Yeah, it's wild that just like this. Oh yeah, Hestia used a gun.
Just a gun.
And that's great. Honestly, I'm not. Yeah, goddess of fire? Sure.
Why not?
Before she was, oh yeah, this is the lore of the Exegryph. Before she was goddess of the hearth, she specialized in another type of fire. Just
covering fire, in fact.
Yeah, exactly. Incredible. So that's Hestia in the Hades game. Obviously, we got to move on to Lore Olympus.
Yeah.
In Lore Olympus,
yep.
She's the head of Tegoum, which is the goddesses of eternal maidenhood.
Mm-hmm.
Which makes sense because she is the oldest goddess there, so she would have been essentially founder of the group. Earlier, I was like, oh, I hear Athena and Artemis, which would have to be tracked because if Apollo's been born, Artemis went and made herself a maiden goddess the moment she was born. So in that story, essentially, Hestia is the last of the maiden goddesses to join the group.
Yeah.
But this would make sense for her to be the founding member. And she runs it. She's also incredibly charitable in general. She seems to do a lot of community service things in Olympus.
It makes sense.
It's kind of a bummer that the first actual big thing we see her do is be mean to Persephone about the paparazzi picture and take the jacket from her.
A little bit, but it's also then we find out in the stories that Apollo had kind of manipulated her a little bit.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out whether that's canon.
I mean...
Because traditionally, deleted scenes are not considered canon because they weren't in the original thing. But because it was released, is it a behind-the-scenes
even
story?
Later, Artemis comments on, she's never been that mad before. I don't understand why she was.
Yeah, and it's because we're supposed to know that it was Apollo, but that never got shown. Yeah. And still hasn't ever been told that Apollo went to Hestia.
Well...
So that's just the thing.
I'll count it as canon because it makes sense. We've seen her in everything in other
because
scenes.
in later
it doesn't
things,
make any
it doesn't
fucking
make sense for her to have reacted so cruelly without ever even going to, because she already made up her mind that Persephone was making them look bad and doing this on purpose and was not taking it seriously, and she had to be put in line because Apollo put all of that in Hestia's head. Yeah. When it feels like what Hestia would have actually done is gone to Persephone and be like, "What happened?
What's going on? Why
What
is this?
What is this about? Tell me what happened, or what's going on? This doesn't seem like you." So it is weird. But we get her. She was one of the six, six traders dynasty who overthrew the Titans. Not a daughter of Rhea. That's the thing we've established. The goddesses were, I think they're all Metis's daughters.
I think so, because I think Hera was too.
Yeah, because Hera was, Demeter was. And because Demeter talks about how she knew Metis made Hera out of starlight and Hestia out of fire, and that's how she knew she could make Persephone. Mm-hmm. So, I like Hera. I like Hestia. She's not super active. I think she's the head of Tegoum.
Mm-hmm. In a relationship with Athena.
If we find that out later, is that she and Athena are in a physical romantic relationship. Yep. So it's not just that queer platonic or literally these two are not maidens.
No, they are not maidens in
the sense of like no, yeah, they're not maidens. Like if you're having sex, you're not a maiden.
I mean, in the Greek sense, they are.
Yeah, and that's some nonsense, and I'm not going to subscribe to it in this podcast.
That's Greek storytelling, Darien.
Oh my God, they drive cars.
Yeah. That's because they're gods, but when we go to the mortal world, do you see any cars, Darien? No, it's ancient Greek.
I don't think that's Rachel Smith's intent for it to be the Olympian and the underworld elements to be considered taking place in ancient Greek with ancient Greek customs and beliefs.
Then why are they still considered maidens?
Because they don't get married. They're supposed to. Okay, here to the benefit of the doubt. I think what happened is Athena and Hestia have been working together for a long time and they just fell in love.
And I get that. But then they should drop out of the to-go-im.
They should. Because even Artemis is like, am I the only one that takes this seriously? This like vow of eternal chastity seriously? And the answer is yes. Sorry, probably, Artemis, you are. Listen, I do love it though. Hestia and Athena together. I think that's very charming. I'm delighted by it. And that's really it.
Yeah. I can't think of anything that I've seen Hestia in.
I've got 2 more. Okay. I've got 3 more.
Okay.
Just real brief shout out for Hercules, the animated series.
Oh, right on.
Hestia doesn't do a lot in the series, but she shows up, and there's one episode where she's a more prominent character. She's voiced by Betty White.
Nice.
And I thought that was worth mentioning. There is the Distrapando la Historia series of like animated music videos about the gods. Yeah. We did a Remyth episode about that last year.
Those are fun. Definitely check those out.
The Hestia one is my favorite. In it shows like a lot of cool Hestia myths. Like there's the one of the creepy god, and she just gets to punch him herself. There's another one that's like a kind of a readaptation of another like Roman myth. And I thought about getting into it. I can't. But it gives Hestia a cool hero moment in the music video. So go check it out.
Nice.
She almost throws hands with Aphrodite because she hates her so much. Which I think is very funny because Aphrodite sees her as a bitch and Hestia's ready to throw hands, which I just think is great. And all she wants to do is play video games.
Understandable.
There's really great scenes. So she's just like hanging out playing video games. Poseidon and Apollo come to fuck with her. She tells them off to Zeus. Zeus tells him to leave her alone. And she's like just kind of like a gamer girl. And a person she games with a lot is Hades, another god who just doesn't leave his house. Yeah. So I'm very into the idea of Hestia and Hades being 2 siblings who are actually very close because they game a lot because neither one of them leave their house.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. And is that maybe my favorite version of Hestia in pop culture? I think it is. I think she is.
It's very much so a fun one.
The song is very like 80s pop girl, and I love it. She looks like Flame Princess, and I love it.
Mm-hmm.
And the last one I have is Hestia from Girl, Goddess, Queen by B. Fitzgerald, which is the book I just read.
Yeah.
That you will definitely listen to if there ever is an English audiobook version of it.
Is there not an English one?
No, there's a German one.
Of course there is.
Why? I don't know. But it's very cool. Dear listeners, if you are one of our Podcast Hero patrons or higher, you have already heard me and my girlfriend Kelsey talk all about this book on the August Remyth episode. But Hestia makes brief appearances in this one. This story is like a YA rom-com retelling of Hades and Persephone, which sounds very bubblegum pop, and this book is not. It does not pull its punches. It is very painful and intense at times in its depiction of the world, but is simultaneously lovely and beautiful, and my favorite book I've read in a very long time.
Nice.
But Hestia in that, B. Fitzgerald does a really cool thing playing with the concept of time, where Kronos... He didn't just swallow his own sons. He swallowed the children of every powerful titan. So the original 3 are actually not related at all. They just were all swallowed or the original 6, were all swallowed, including Zeus. And then when they were freed, what Kronos did in the thing is that he froze them in time as infants and then swallowed them. So not only did they have to pull them out, but they also had to wait for the like spell that was on them to become undone. So Hera woke up first, so she is kind of like the oldest. And then Hestia and Hades woke up last. So in this book, they're actually kind of not much older than Persephone herself is, who has just reached the age where Zeus wants to marry her off. So Hestia asked for, she's one of the maiden goddess asked to never be married. When Persephone finds this out, she goes to Zeus to ask for as well, and he blows her off and is like, no, I've already lost 2 of my daughters to that. I'm not going to give it to you too. And she's just so angry, she destroys an entire valley of flowers because of her rage. The Hestia, goddess of hearth, there in the story, Demeter is trying to basically tells horror in this part of the book, just every horror story that could ever happen to a woman during this time.
Mm-hmm.
And so the goddesses often come over and they'll give her advice on how to survive. So Aphrodite's like, well, if you have to travel, don't wear a dress, disguise yourself as a man and try to travel in a group. And Athena teaches her places to attack a man to try to defend herself.
Mm-hmm.
And Hestia's like, listen, you should always stay home. Which is yeah, I would expect that from the goddess of home and hearth. But if you have to leave, or if you find yourself somewhere, you march to the first palace and demand Xenia, which is the thing we talked about, that concept of hospitality.
Mm-hmm.
In Girl, Goddess, Queen, Hestia is the one who actually created the concept of Xenia. And it's
Makes
not just
sense.
an idea. It's it's essentially the equivalent of swearing on the river Styx.
Mm-hmm.
Where if you demand Xenia from your host and they break it, they will be cursed terrible by Hestia. So in the book, it talks about well, that doesn't mean a man couldn't hurt me if I demanded Xenia. He could still hurt me, but he would be punished for it.
Yeah.
And that's at least something, whereas before there was nothing.
Yeah.
And then spoilers for Girl, Goddess, Queen, so Persephone uses it when she goes to the underworld, because at first Hades doesn't want to help her because he doesn't trust her. So she demands Xenia, and then ends up revoking it later when she realizes he's trying to goad her into breaking it herself by attacking him, because he just doesn't trust her. Later on, when she does get married to him, everything happens. It's a great book. I love it so much. And Hestia's at the wedding. She's the first to go, because she's not much older than Persephone. She's very young, young compared to the gods. She goes to Persephone. She's the first to ask her, are you okay? Because there is a story that Hades kidnapped her. No one really knows what happened, but she's the only one that asks her if she's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, I am. And she's like, I felt you demand Xenia, and then I felt you relinquish it. He didn't do anything to you. He's like, no, it was complicated, but no, I'm okay. And she also has this wonderful line. She's like, well, as the goddess of home and hearth, I'm so happy to see that you found yours.
Nice.
And it's really cool. Smash cut to the end where Zeus takes Xenia away from Hestia to use it for himself, because he actually realized how powerful it could be. And Zeus isn't in the game of giving women power he can't control.
Yeah.
So thus the mortals begin to call him Zeus Xenia, which is a thing that actually happens. Zeus Xenia, it was the concept of Xenia. But I want to talk a little bit about that. That's why I saved Girl, Goddess, Queen for last, because one last thing I want to talk about in regards to Hestia is how the concept of Hestia related to this concept of Xenia. We've talked about so much. And B. Fitzgerald did so much research and deep dived into stuff that it made me wonder if originally Xenia was associated more with Hestia.
It would make a lot of sense if it was.
Because it feels like a thing that would be more home and hearth. It's a spiritual concept.
Yeah, it's hospitality at your home.
Yeah, exactly. Giving hospitality to strangers. Whereas when you associate it with Zeus, it becomes a political construct of only offering hospitality when it suits you, when it could be powerful or manipulative. Yeah. And Hestia, there was this concept of philoxenia, which is love for strangers, which was a very, I based on limited things I could find, seemed to be a Hestia concept.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea of offering Xenia, and usually when characters offer Xenia in the Odyssey or something, it's because they're going to turn around and someone's going to break it.
Yeah.
And it's to symbolize when Polyphemus is breaking Xenia by eating them. It's to demonstrate oh, this being doesn't even have they're in his home and he won't even do it. He's so monstrous, not just in appearance, but in behavior that's so against our cultural norms. It's almost always shows up in stories just so someone can break it.
Well, I mean, if it's to be it's to show that, hey, this person's not a good person.
Yeah,
especially
exactly.
if this was something that was revered in ancient Greece.
Yeah.
It would be trying to think of a comparison today, but I'm just drawing a blank.
Yeah. I don't really have that. But yeah, the idea, I like the idea of, it just like you said, it makes sense for Hestia. It feels like calling on Xenia in the name of Hestia feels like a more real and genuine and sincere concept of love for strangers and offering home and protection and safety. Mm-hmm. Whereas calling on it in the name of Zeus definitely feels more I'll do this for you because it's good for me to do so.
Yeah.
Because Zeus ruins everything.
Yep.
That is all I have on Hestia. DJ, do you have any thoughts? I feel like I talked a lot.
Hestia's a fun god.
She is. I like Hestia an awful lot.
Yeah.
I just think she's neat.
I don't have anything else. I just think it's so funny that they gave her a gun in Hades. I think it was so funny.
Mm-hmm. Hestia not just running Camp Half-Blood is a thing that annoys me. It feels like that's a thing she should do. I wish at the end Riordan had the commitment to have Apollo be like, I'm out. I'm going to go run Camp Half-Blood. And Hestia's like, tight. I'm going to be there. And they just run Camp Half-Blood. And Dionysus is also still technically camp director, but like lead counselor Apollo Lester is there. Also, I have this really fun AU in my head where when May Castellan comes to become the Oracle and it all goes bad, instead of sending this infant back with this woman who is not capable of caring for him, instead he remains at Camp Half-Blood and Hestia raises him, and he is essentially a son of Hestia.
Probably should have stayed there.
But the thing about it is, it still plays out the same way. But only this time, Luke is angry at the gods for, one, what happened to his mother, and how when he finds out about her, how she was just left without any help at all, totally alone, and sees like the disrespect and dismissive nature of like Hestia, and who he views as his mother now because she raised him. He's views himself as a son of Hestia. Hold on, let me finish.
Yeah.
And also with that like perspective, seeing how the Hestia is not in charge of Camp Half-Blood, and they sent Dionysus as a punishment, and that being more underlined is if the gods view caring for us as a punishment, then they don't care for us at all.
Yeah.
And actually, like, almost I would be a little bit more on Luke's side other than just being like, Kronos. And he still sides with Kronos and does all these things, and it's very tragic. But then, like, how does he find Talia and I
think the thing about having him stay there and then being mad about his mom, I would get that if Hermes didn't start showing up and kind of taking care of May Castellan after Luke left. Mm-hmm. We know that Hermes started showing up after because he's not allowed to deal with his son. And so when his son left, he did start showing up. So if he never went with his mom, Hermes would have been taken care of.
Oh, is that it? Is that actually why May never got any help from Hermes? Because Hermes wasn't allowed to interfere with his children?
Yeah, so, like, when May Castellan started seeing the future, that set Luke's path.
Yeah.
And so now he can't interfere with his children, and we already know that gods in general couldn't interfere with their children all too much.
So the thing is, like, May Castellan should have been sent to like a really like a good psychiatric facility where someone could care for her and not like left alone. But like she doesn't have a job, so how does they have the house still? So maybe Hermes has been delivering money, like trying to do what he can. Yeah, probably the same. Yeah, you have a point. Either way, Hestia is great, and there is more opportunity to use her. And I think still by operating within the structure of the myth, because I think one thing Rick Riordan does is he never wants to have a too grand interpretation of a character that's too outside of the myth unless it's funny.
Yeah.
He will do it if it gets to be a fun joke.
It's because it's a YA book.
Because it's a middle grade book.
Yeah, middle grade.
Let's be specific. Whereas Girl, Goddess, Queen can have a little bit more. But like even the differences in Hades, I would say still very in Girl, Goddess, Queen, still very much operate within the structure of the understanding and interpretation of these myths. Mm-hmm. And I feel like Hestia could be used in a more like she could be more of a physical presence. And honestly, at Camp Half-Blood should absolutely be more of a physical presence, especially in Percy's narrative where this is his home that he's going to fight
It's for. Also like she's there already.
Yeah, but Percy never talked to her because Rick never wanted to write about it.
Even still, like she's there already. She should have more of a role rather than just
exactly. She's actually. You already told us she's there. Where's she at, Rick?
What has she been doing? Has she really just been sitting there 24 hours a day? I guess
kinda. I guess, but like, you just let this fire burn all the time. That seems a little unsafe. Is it magic? Oh.
I mean, yeah.
Also, listeners, what do you think? Do you have any other cool interpretations of Hestia that we don't know about? I definitely want to know about them.
Yeah, I'd like to hear about them too. Mm-hmm. She's not used a lot, and I would like to know where else she has been.
Yeah. What do you think? Are you also annoyed that we haven't seen Hestia again in any of these books? How do you feel about that? Should she be in Trials of Apollo? And why is the answer yes? Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Share your ideas with us over on Instagram, or if you are one of our patrons, you can hit us up on Patreon or on our Discord that every patron has access to. Patrons also get to vote on episode topics once every quarter. We're just about to find the results of those and see what we're going to talk about. We might be making Pokemon teams for the gods.
It's looking like that's the case.
Mm-hmm. And if you think that sounds cool and you want to hear that episode, make sure you're one of our patrons. You can learn more all about Patreon. We really appreciate everyone who is able to obviously like listen to the show folks who have a little bit extra that can toss our way to help on Patreon. You literally help the show continue to grow. You're the reason we've been able to go weekly. Also a big help right now since I am leaving my current job.
Yeah.
And so the money
Darien
on Patreon
is undergoing large life changes.
Large life changes. Large semi-reckless financial life changes. But the money we get from Patreon ensure that we are still able to cover the costs of the podcast and any unexpected things that might come up. Hey, microphones and cords sometimes go out.
Yeah.
And make sure we are staying on top of the podcast and continuing to create it. So the support we get from Patreon is so wonderful, but we know not everyone is in the position to be able to like give financially. So again, like if you just listen to the podcast, that is incredible because that is like literally like if people can give money, but if no one listened, why would we do this?
Yep. We enjoy the fact that we have an audience and we love each and every single one of you. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, we love the fact that you listen. If you want to like just hit us up on Instagram, let us know what you like. That's really cool to hear. Or just tell a friend about the podcast.
And if you give us a review, specifically 5 or 4 stars, we will read it here.
I will not read anything less than 5 stars.
I will be reading 4-star reviews.
You don't even know how to see the reviews, DJ.
You're absolutely right because you haven't taught me, Darien.
Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, don't be like Zeus.
Don't be like Zeus.
Muses of Mythology is created and hosted by Darien and DJ Smartt. It's edited by Darien Smartt. The show is produced by Darien and DJ Smartt, as well as
Tim O'Connor,
The Crystal Con Man,
Nicholas Miller. Our music is Athens Festival by Martin Hain, and our cover art is by Audrey Miller. You can find her on Instagram at Bombshell Nutshell Art.
Want more Muses of Mythology? Support the show on Patreon. Just $1 gets you exclusive bonus content. Get more at patreon.com/Muses of Mythology.
You can also support the show by leaving a review at lovethepodcast.com/Muses of Mythology, or tell a friend why you love the show.
Don't forget to check out all of our episodes and episode transcripts at musesofmythology.com.
Thanks for listening.